What if I told you that something as simple as salt placed in your shoes could change the direction of your life forever? No, not because of superstition, but because of revelation. You see, salt isn't just seasoning. It's symbolism. It represents value, preservation, purpose. And when you step into life with that awareness, every move becomes intentional and every step becomes destiny-driven. What if you've been walking through life unaware of the power that's been lying at your feet all along? See, salt, that simple, everyday element, it holds a deeper meaning than most people realize. It's not just something you sprinkle on food. Salt is preservation. Salt is value. Salt is purpose. And when you put salt in your shoes, you're not just filling a pair of soles. You're reminding yourself that you carry substance. Everywhere your feet go, there should be impact. Every step you take should leave a trace of influence. Salt in your shoes is a declaration that you're not walking empty anymore. You're walking with awareness. You're walking with identity. You're walking with intention. But here's the issue. Most people don't know what they're walking with. So they don't know what they're walking toward. They wonder. They guess. They hope. But they never decide. Salt makes you decide. It grounds you. It reminds you that you carry value no matter how long the journey, no matter how dusty the road. And that's the danger of living without salt. You move, but you don't preserve anything. You build, but you don't last. You influence, but you fade. When salt is in your shoes, even your silence speaks. Even your presence has power. You don't have to announce who you are. Your walk does it for you. Salt doesn't just season. It secures. It means you're walking as someone who knows who they are and who refuses to settle for less than the fullness of their purpose. So the next time life tells you you're just one person, remember, even a little salt can flavor an entire room. Even a little truth can shift an entire generation. But what happens when that salt becomes your foundation? When it's not just in your shoes, but in your mindset, in your decisions, in your destiny. Let's go deeper. Because the strength of your foundation determines how far you can go. Have you ever seen a tall building standing firm through storms, shaking winds and even earthquakes? You know why? It's not because of what you see above the ground. It's because of what's buried beneath it. The foundation. Your life is the same way. If your foundation is weak, it doesn't matter how gifted you are, how talented, how skilled, how popular, it won't last. But if your foundation is solid, you can weather pressure. You can survive storms. You can carry the weight of greatness without collapsing under it. Salt in the shoes isn't just about flavor, it's about foundation. Because what goes under your feet supports everything that comes after. Now, here's the danger. Most people are building lives on shaky ground. They build on opinions. They build on emotions. They build on applause. But applause fades, emotions shift, and opinions change. You've got to build on something unchanging. And salt represents that. Unchanging value, preserved identity, solid truth. It's invisible to the eye, but crucial to the journey. Because no matter how high you go, your success will always rest on your structure. And your structure, that's your mindset, your discipline, your principles. You see, salt settles at the bottom of the shoe, the place most people overlook. But that's exactly where greatness starts, in the places no one sees. The early mornings, the silent battles, the small decisions. Your foundation is formed when nobody's watching. So the question is, what are you standing on? What's under your feet? Because if your base is broken, your future is at risk. Salt in your shoes says, I'm not just walking anywhere. I'm building something with every step. It reminds you that you're not a wanderer. You're an architect. You're laying down strength, one step at a time. But now the question becomes, what happens when this salt, this foundation, becomes more than personal? What happens when it becomes a message others can feel just by being around you? Let's talk about why salt in your shoes isn't just for you. Salt in the shoes sounds strange to some, right? But listen, it's not about superstition, it's about symbolism. It's a statement, a declaration. You're saying, I know who I am, I know what I carry, and I refuse to walk through life empty. You see, salt is never random. It was designed to preserve, to season, to influence whatever it touches. So when you place salt in your shoes, you're not just doing something physical. You're performing something spiritual, something mental, something intentional. You're saying, everywhere I step, I leave something behind. But here's the problem. Too many people are going through life reacting instead of responding. They are influenced by their environment instead of influencing it. They walk into rooms looking for validation instead of bringing transformation. Why? Because they've forgotten the meaning behind their movement. They've forgotten that purpose should be in every step. Salt in your shoes is a reminder that your walk carries weight, that your presence carries influence, that your daily actions are either preserving your destiny or poisoning it. Every step you take is either defining your future or delaying it. So the question is, are you walking with purpose or are you just walking with pressure? Are you living by design or by default? Salt doesn't just sit there. It changes the environment it's in. It shifts the atmosphere. It pulls out flavor. It prevents decay. So, when salt is in your shoes, you're telling the world, I refuse to walk in confusion, compromise, or comparison. You're saying, I walk in truth, in clarity, in conviction. Because every great journey begins when you know what you're walking with. Now, think about this. If salt in your shoes can influence your personal walk, what happens when it starts affecting your public path? When the ordinary steps you take begin unlocking extraordinary doors. Let's talk about how one small act can shift your entire destiny. What if I told you the step you're taking today could be the doorway to a destiny you never imagined? Yes, just one step. See, life doesn't change when you leap. It changes when you learn to step right. And when there's salt in your shoes, every step becomes a statement. Every move becomes a message. And every stride becomes strategic. You're no longer walking in circles. You're no longer moving just to keep busy. You're stepping with direction, with purpose, with power. Because salt turns ordinary steps into extraordinary shifts. You walk into a room and people feel the shift. You speak a word and clarity begins to rise. You make a decision and things start falling into place. Why? because you're not just moving with your feet, you're moving with your spirit. Salt grounds your steps in wisdom. It anchors your movements in meaning. It keeps your walk from being wasted. There are people who've been walking for years and still haven't moved forward. They've been active, but not effective. Busy, but not productive. That's what happens when you walk without salt. Motion without meaning. But when you place salt in your shoes, you turn routine into revelation. Suddenly, the job isn't just a job, it's a platform. The hallway isn't just a hallway, it's a launching pad. The delay isn't just a delay, it's preparation in disguise. Salt teaches you to walk like every step matters, because it does. Every step either moves you closer to purpose or further from it. And listen, this kind of walk will start opening doors that no man can shut. People will wonder, how did they get here? How are things shifting so fast? But it won't be luck. It'll be salt. Quiet, consistent, strategic, turning footsteps into footprints that last. But here's the real question. What's guiding your steps? What's keeping you focused when distractions pull? What keeps you anchored when the noise gets loud? Let's talk about the one thing that gives you authority with every step, even when you walk into dark places. You ever walked into a room and everything just paused? Not because of what you said, but because of what you carried. That's authority. And authority doesn't come from titles, it comes from truth. It comes from alignment. It comes when your life is anchored from the ground up. See, when salt is in your shoes, it's not just there to preserve, it's there to remind. It reminds you of who you are and whose you are. It grounds your identity before you ever speak a word. Because let's be honest, this world doesn't give you authority. It tries to strip it. Every day you're surrounded by distractions, voices, lies, trying to make you question your worth. But when you've got salt in your shoes, you walk different. You don't walk in confusion, you walk in clarity. You don't walk in fear, you walk in faith. You carry something that cannot be bought. You carry weight without ever raising your voice. And the reason? You're not walking for approval. You're walking from position. Your feet are rooted in something deeper than applause. Salt keeps you from shifting with every opinion. It holds your path steady when the terrain gets rocky. It whispers to your soul, don't bow, don't break, don't beg. Because you've already been authorized by the assignment on your life. And people can feel it. They won't know what it is, but they'll know something's different. That's what happens when you walk with presence, not just personality. That's what happens when your steps are aligned with your source. But here's where it gets real. When you walk with authority, opposition will come. You'll face resistance, jealousy, spiritual attacks, not because you're wrong, but because you're right. Because salt doesn't just preserve, it exposes. And when you walk in truth, falsehood gets uncomfortable. So how do you keep walking when darkness pushes back? How do you keep your spirit sharp when the fight around you gets loud? Let's talk about the silent influence that shifts atmospheres. Even when you say nothing at all, there's a kind of power that doesn't make noise. It doesn't shout. It doesn't beg. It doesn't compete. It just enters and everything shifts. That's what salt does. quietly, invisibly, but unmistakably. You don't always see it working, but you feel the difference when it's present. Salt is influence, real influence, not the kind that comes from trends, but the kind that comes from truth. And when it's in your shoes, you carry that influence with every step. You start shifting atmospheres, not with force, but with presence, not with status, but with spirit. You walk into a meeting and peace follows. You sit in a room and tension breaks. You speak one sentence and clarity enters. That's not charisma, that's salt. That's the evidence of someone who walks in quiet power. But here's the thing. We live in a world obsessed with noise. People want attention, followers, applause. But salt isn't loud. It's lasting. It doesn't seek attention. It creates impact. And that's the difference between noise and influence. Noise fades. Influence lingers. Salt doesn't need a platform. It turns wherever you stand into one. The truth is, you don't need everyone to see you. You need the right ones to feel you. And when your walk is seasoned with salt, you won't have to force open doors. They'll open because of the weight you carry. But here's where it gets deeper. Salt doesn't just flavor, it exposes decay. Your presence will start to reveal what's fake. And when you carry real influence, the enemy gets uncomfortable. Because when you show up, darkness knows it has to move. That's why you've got to protect what you carry. You've got to stay grounded, stay clean, stay aligned. Because your influence isn't for show, it's for shift. And the next generation, they're watching not what you say, but how you walk. So what happens when your influence becomes legacy? When every step you take begins shaping those who follow behind you. Let's talk about how your walk starts building a path for others to rise. Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, what am I really walking in? Am I walking in confusion or conviction? Am I stepping in circles or stepping in purpose? See, when salt is in your shoes, you don't just walk. You walk with substance. You don't just exist. You carry something. You're not just moving through life, you're moving something forward. Salt turns your steps into statements. It says, I'm not walking without meaning. I'm not showing up empty. I know what I bring. And when you know what you bring, you stop chasing approval. You stop shrinking in the face of pressure. Because you've got substance under your feet. We live in a generation where style is louder than substance. But salt doesn't care about the surface. It goes deep. It reminds you that your identity isn't in what you wear, what you drive, or what you post. It's in what you walk in. It's in the values that hold you together when everything around you is falling apart. It's in the weight of your principles, the strength of your decisions, and the clarity of your purpose. You don't need a spotlight because salt makes your path light up. You don't need to scream for attention because salt gives your silence. And when your walk is seasoned with substance, people can feel the difference. They don't just hear your words, they sense your integrity. They don't just see your actions, they trust your consistency. But don't miss this. Salt also keeps you accountable. Because when you know you're walking with substance, you can't afford to compromise. You can't walk just anywhere, do just anything, say just anything, because you know your steps are shaping something bigger than you. And that is the mark of true maturity. Knowing that every move matters, knowing that someone is following your footsteps even when you don't see them. So the question is, what happens when your walk becomes more than just direction? What happens when it becomes a call, a sound that awakens the potential in others? And let's talk about what it means to walk in a way that shifts not just moments, but generations. When your feet carry purpose, your path can never stay the same. Because now you're not just walking, you're leading. You're not just moving, you're making history. Salt in your shoes means you're walking in identity, in intention, and in legacy. Every step is planting seeds. Every move is marking territory. And here's the power behind it. You may not see the full impact right away. But make no mistake, somebody's watching, somebody's following your trail. Somebody is stepping where you've stepped, learning how to stand because you refuse to sit. You weren't born just to pass time, you were born to pass down truth. Salt makes sure that what begins with you doesn't end with you. It preserves your values, your integrity, your vision for those coming after. Your walk becomes a map for someone else's breakthrough. That means the way you handle pressure becomes someone else's pattern. The way you rise after failure becomes someone else's fuel. The way you choose faith over fear becomes someone else's foundation. But here's the warning. If you walk with no salt, you leave nothing behind. No trace, no lesson, no legacy. You walked, but nothing changed. You moved, but nothing shifted. You lived, but nothing lasted. Salt makes your life last beyond your lifetime. It preserves your principles in a world that's decaying in values. And when your feet are filled with purpose, you stop reacting to the world and start reshaping it. So don't take another step lightly, because from this moment forward, every step has weight. Every decision leaves a print. And every path you walk has the power to transform someone else's future. This is your reminder. You weren't made to blend in. You were made to stand out. You weren't made to fade away. You were made to leave a mark. So put salt in your shoes and walk like your life depends on it, because it does. Walk like generations are waiting on you, because they are. And walk knowing that with every step, your destiny is rising to meet you.